Good morning, my dear friends. I hope you had a great time yesterday and most of all last night. And this is the moment where surely many of you wish there was no such thing as a mobile phone or social media. But let's agree that what happened at the POLIS party will stay at the POLIS party, while we will continue to share, of course, all the professional news and all the good stories that we are sharing here during the day. Now, the focus of this plenary session is winning elections with sustainable mobility. A bit provocative, you may think, but that's how you know us. Next year is a big election year here in Belgium, with elections on all possible levels. And believe me, we have many levels. But also with the European elections in the pipeline. And in the first half of 2024, Belgium will be holding the presidency of the EU. I'm therefore delighted that we have representatives from that Belgian presidency with us today, who will share the mobility topics that will be on Belgium's European agenda in the first half of 2024. So let me welcome to the stage Kim Buist, member of the Parliament in Belgium, of the Federal Parliament.
Members, dear colleagues, let's say, let me start by apologizing to Federal Mobility Minister Georges Gilkinet for not being here. Unfortunately, he had to attend a last-minute meeting. It is at his request that I am replacing him here today as a member of the Federal Parliament, where I am, among others, member of the Mobility Committee. That being said, I am asked to share with you how this federal government put sustainable mobility at the core of its mobility policy. Sustainable mobility, which is also well represented throughout the program of this conference. This conference focuses on the local level, on cities, on municipalities. And the local level, indeed, is a quite interesting one, with its infrastructure, environment, but also proximity for the citizens. But we think that also other authorities have important leverages as well. Like Minister Gilkinet's colleague, Minister Lydia Peeters, on the regional level in Flanders. Minister Gilkinet himself on the national level here in Belgium. And even Europe is taking more important steps. I could talk about trains. I could have a word on shared cars. But I will lay the focus of my speech on another important item. One that was first and foremost carried by the regional entity, then federated by Minister Gilkinet himself, who also brought it to the European level. I'm talking, of course, about cycling policies. When Mr. Gilkinet took office as Belgium's Minister of Mobility, there was no coherent policy on cycling on the national level. And that has been changed by this federal government. In 2021, Belgium formally adopted its very first action plan on cycling promotion called Be Cyclist. And that plan counts 52 precise measures. And every member of government participates in this or in his or her specific domain. It's a format that is unique in Europe. We're talking, for example, of theft prevention, where Interior and Justice ministries are involved. Belgium will have its first national and public register of bicycles by the beginning of next year. Needless to say, it represents a big step forward. But in the plan, the Be Cyclist plan, there is also work for the Ministers of Labour and Finances. Since 2023, every worker in the private sector can obtain a kilometre allowance when commuting to work by bicycle. In this, Belgium is a front runner, and other countries admire us for this. Be Cyclist also emphasizes a golden combination: train, and bicycle. With, in the first place, the development of bicycle parklets in train stations. By the way, have you maybe tested the brand new bicycle parking that opened underneath the Leuven railway station? But there is also attention for the combination of transport and bicycles and trains by emphasizing how important it is to have places for bicycles on the train. So we will double the capacity of bikes on trains within the next 10 years. Implementing rules is important, but it's also important that people are informed about these new regulations. Therefore, our national railway operator has just launched a test version of an app that indicates where the bicycle carriage is situated for every train. This should help and ease the stress with commuters. These are just 3 of those 52 measures of the B-Cyclist Plan. 50 of them are already carried out or will be carried out by the end of next year. So you see, things do move on the national level. But mobility knows no borders, some of you may argue. So what's the plan on the European level then? Until now, cycling is not considered as a full-fledged mode of mobility by the European Commission. But Minister Gilkinet is pushing to change that by an initiative of the member states. In June 2022, on World Cycling Day, Minister Gilkinet has launched the European Cycling Declaration. Through this Belgian initiative, the signatory countries asked the European Commission to take cycling seriously and to adopt a dedicated strategy. Gathering 16 member states around such a plan, well, I can tell you it's a challenge. It was a major political lobbying operation, but it paid off. By the end of this legislative period, there will probably be even more signatory countries. They represent almost half of the European population and a large majority of the countries. The European Parliament has taken up the issue through a similar resolution this year, and the initiative has been heard in the Commission on the 5th of October of 2023 in Sevilla. The Commission presented a draft for an interinstitutional declaration on the subject, which for the first time offers ambitious prospects for the development of a European cycling policy. We have momentum. Let's use it. So you see, things are moving on the national level. The minister's enthusiasm has been spotted by the European Commission, so now it's time to perform during the Belgian presidency of Council of the European Union at the beginning of next year. That is an important moment for strengthening sustainable mobility and modal shift in general. We, Belgians, are planning to focus on this development during the presidency. Minister Peeters will tell you more about a high-level meeting in Hasselt in January. The next step will be April 2024. The minister will have the pleasure to receive all his European colleagues during a council summit in Brussels, which is called Informal Council. And all 26 ministers will be present to listen to a specific session on active mobility. Well, hopefully you will have the chance to meet Minister Gilkinet next year in Hasselt for the cycling event organized during the Belgian European presidency, or in Ghent for Velocity in June 2024. I'm sure that the Vice Major of Ghent, Mr. Matteo, can tell you more about that. Well, thank you all for your attention, and I hope you have an inspiring continuing of your day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Burst, and great to see that cycling will be placed front and center in the Belgian presidency of the EU. And I'm sure this will be confirmed as well by our next speaker, who is Soetkin Jahaas. She's representing Minister Lydia Peeters of the Flanders Region, in charge of mobility and public works. Soetkin.
Good morning, everyone. Unfortunately, Flemish Minister of Mobility and Public Works, Lydia Peeters, could not be physically present herself here today, but she asked me to address you on her behalf, since sustainable and active transport is a topic close to her heart. It is quite exceptional that such a numerous, diverse and enthusiastic group of mobility experts can gather in one place to exchange ideas and gain inspiration, and it is fantastic that this can happen here in Flanders. I would therefore like very much to thank POLIS and our host, the city of Leuven, for organizing this impressive event. After the various sessions you all have attended, I do not want to overload you with more mobility concepts or innovations, but I would like to draw your attention to a form of mobility that is so simple and with which many of us are so familiar that sometimes we risk losing sight of it and of its enormous importance. I'm talking about active mobility and cycling in particular. Cycling is so established in Flanders that hardly anyone is surprised anymore by the huge numbers of commuters and school children we see on the cycle paths here every morning and evening. However, these many cyclists deserve our full attention because there is still a lot of untapped potential. Today, already 22% of Flemish people ride their bikes to work. That is an impressive figure, but our ambitions reach further. By 2030, we want 30% of all journeys in Flanders to be made by bike. This is because we believe that there is still much to be gained, especially for short trips, which today are still too often made by car. To meet our targets and further fuel the cycling reflex, as we call it, we are working on several fronts. First of all, safe and pleasant infrastructure is a basic prerequisite for busy cycling traffic. That is why we have been investing more than 300 million euros a year in cycling infrastructure for several years in a row now, which amounts to a total of more than 1.4 billion euros during this term. That amount is 3 times higher than the previous term, and it shows that in Flanders we consider cycling an indispensable means of transport in our modal split today and in the future. Secondly, we are investing massively in road safety, with a new policy plan consisting of no less than 37 measures. We want to significantly increase the safety of active road users. Various campaigns, infrastructural measures, and assessment frameworks to support local governments in their mobility policy and road design contribute to this. And finally, we make cycling more accessible by working with civil society to remove the barriers that people experience to getting around by bike, whether these barriers are related to age, health conditions, habits, or culture. We sometimes jokingly call the relatively small Flanders here a big village. But in this age of globalization, you could say the same about Europe, because mobility does not stop at national borders, especially now that electric bikes and speed pedelecs are on the rise, making it possible to cover even greater distances by bike. In the Maasland region, for example, it is not exceptional for someone living in Flanders to work in the Netherlands and to cover that commute by bike. That is exactly why cooperation between the different European regions, especially in terms of infrastructure and networks, is crucial to fully make the use of the potential of cycling. Minister Peeters is hugely looking forward to taking the ambitious Flemish policy agenda for sustainable and active mobility to the European level in the first half of next year, and to further develop the new European Declaration on Cycling that was proposed by the European Commission this autumn. This European Declaration on Cycling marks a turning point in terms of the position of cycling in the field of mobility. The declaration provides the first impetus for a European-level framework to maximize the potential of cycling across the European Union. It contains 8 principles, including the development and strengthening of cycling policies, as well as additional efforts on cycling infrastructure and improving data collection on cycling. Those 8 possible areas of work should allow the next European Commission to proceed with new legislative initiatives to translate the cycling declaration into practice. Reaching an agreement on a joint declaration between the European Parliament, the Council and the European Commission is a top priority for Flanders and Belgium. I would like to end with a warm invitation to the high-level EU Cycling Conference, also mentioned by my colleague, that will be organized by Minister Peeters on the 30th of January 2024 in Hasselt, here in Flanders. The conference will be an important milestone during the Belgian presidency, where together with European transport ministers and other interested stakeholders, we will, for the first time, have a substantive discussion on how to concretely implement the European Declaration on Cycling in order to ensure that cycling becomes a fully fledged transport mode in European transport policy. I sincerely hope to see you all there, and for now, I would like to already wish you a safe and perhaps even a sustainable journey back home later today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sutkin, and indeed all eyes on the bike in the upcoming Belgian presidency. And you're warmly invited to join us in Hasselt at the end of January. While Leuven is where I was born and raised and still live, Hasselt is where my roots are, so another reason to go there. So, winning elections with sustainable mobility, as we mentioned before. In this session, we will be investigating the intricate relationship between mobility, public perception, and political leadership. Our keynote speaker is Stefan Walgraven. He's professor of political science at the University of Antwerp. And Stefan will share his insights on how politicians' perception of public opinion is biased and why that is a problem, because political decisions are highly influenced by those perceptions. Stefan, over to you.
Okay, I'm going to walk around a little. So I'm going to talk to you about public opinion and how politicians read public opinion and the potential biases and the impact that has on their policies that they prefer. Okay, so I have 4 messages for you. The first one is, maybe some of you don't believe it, but politicians care deeply about public opinion. Second, but their perceptions, although they care deeply, their perceptions are often inaccurate. Politicians do not know public opinion very well. Not only are their perceptions inaccurate, they are also biased, systematically in a certain direction, being in a conservative direction. And fourth, these perceptions matter hugely for policy making. Politicians rely heavily on their perceptions of public opinion when they decide on policies. These are the 4 messages I'm going to, and it's going to be a little political science course. I'm going to teach you about how politicians learn about public opinion. All this has been published in a book. This is a book about Flanders, but we also have data on other countries. Wallonia, Germany, well, it's not a country, it's a region, Germany, Canada, Netherlands, and Switzerland. And we find the same thing in all those countries, although they hugely differ in terms of political system. Switzerland, for example, is a very direct democracy, and the same patterns show up in Switzerland and in Canada, which is a majoritarian democracy. So we're pretty confident that our findings apply to many countries. So first point, politicians care about public opinion. Is estimating public opinion something that you often do? 73% of politicians say, we constantly do this. It's an automatic reflex. We do it all the time, and our radar of public opinion is constantly on. We've done interviews with national MPs, regional MPs, ministers, party leaders in all those countries, and they all say the same thing. We are obsessed with public opinion, constantly thinking about it. How do you know public opinion? Can you rank these sources based on their usefulness for you to learn about public opinion? And what we see here, that the ways politicians learn about public opinion is in a very amateurish way. It's not professional at all. Here we see that politicians say we learn about public opinion by talking to ordinary citizens. This is the number one way of learning about public opinion. So my question is, what can you learn from talking with individuals about public opinion in general? Politicians are very aware of the potential biases of the contacts they have with people. For example, politicians say, we know that the people we meet are mostly middle-class people. We hardly are in touch with lower-class people. Politicians know that the people they talk to tend to support their party. There is a strong bias in the people that address politicians, so a partisan bias. Although they are aware of those biases and they talk to us about those potential biases, they say, still talking to ordinary citizens is the best way for me to learn about public opinion. And I would say the more professional, more systematic ways, doing polls, focus groups, and so on, are not important at all for most politicians to learn about public opinion. Second, I would say, as a consequence, politicians' perceptions are inaccurate. For example, this is a statement. This is how we measure it. I'm going to show you how we do this. We present politicians with a statement in all those countries. And the statement here is, the most polluting cars should be banned from inner cities. And in the population, this is Flanders, 69% of the people agree with this statement, okay? And then here we have the politicians' estimation of the population agreeing with the policy proposal. And so some politicians, those on the left, say that there is no support at all. Of course, this is wrong. And the politicians on the right, so there is one politician there who says that plus 95% of the people agrees with that policy. That's very non-realistic as well, okay? So there are 7 politicians who are in the right category, and all those politicians that we see on the right side, they have a correct majority placement, because the majority is 69 in favor. All politicians who think that a majority could be 51% is in favor, they have a correct majority placement. All the other politicians, which is quite a bit, have a wrong majority placement. So I would say the fairly simple task of guessing whether a majority is in favor or not in favor, quite a few politicians miss the target. By the way, I'm sure political scientists would not do any better, may even much worse. Okay, so because it is difficult. It is difficult to know what people prefer, in which direction their preferences go. So, are they inaccurate? So, this is the number of incorrect majority placements. Every politician in all those countries got 8 policies. And there we see that 2.4 of the majority placements are wrong, which is about 30%. And we see this in all those countries. So 30% of the quite simple task of guessing is the majority in favor or against is wrong. You could say, okay, this is about general public opinion. Why would a politician care about general public opinion? Maybe he or she cares more about his own electorate. It's not better. The electorate is, so politicians don't have a better feel for their electorate than for the general public, which is weird, I would say, because they care more about their own voters than they care about the people in general. Okay, so we see that there are almost 30% incorrect majority placements. So if politicians follow their perception of public opinion, then in 30% of the cases, even if they were true to public opinion, they would direct the policy in the wrong direction, basically. Okay, so this is why we should really care about those perceptions. Those perceptions are not just inaccurate, they are biased in a certain direction. Okay, so, and there is a right wing, we would say in Europe it's a right wing, or in the US we say it's a conservative bias in their perceptions. We see this in all countries. This is how we test it. So these are the statements that we used in Flanders. I could show you the Swiss statements, but that doesn't matter and doesn't differ at all. So this is the real support of those statements. So the banning polluting cars, there is the 69% support. This is the average estimation of support in percentage because we asked politicians to give us a share, a percentage. Okay, what do we see? There are left-wing proposals, and this is an error in our design. We should have as many left-wing than right-wing proposals. But you see, systematically, support for left-wing progressive proposals is underestimated. While there is one right-wing proposal on the screen, the last one, to limit the right to strike, and there you see the opposite. There is a small overestimation of the support for the proposal, which is a right-wing proposal. So we see this in all countries. In all 6 countries, Germany, Canada, there is research on the United States pointing in the exact same direction. There is a systematic bias, not just inaccuracy, but bias in politicians, public opinion, perceptions. 4th point, perceptions matter. Perceptions have an effect on what politicians do. Okay, so on the left hand for you is public opinion, and on the right hand is the policy that can be responsive to public opinion or not. Okay, so how does this work? And political science, the solution is very simple. There are only 2 ways in which responsive policies can come about. First is through the own opinion of a politician. If a politician's own opinion matches public opinion, that politician should just follow his own opinion. And automatically, congruent policies will come about. So I would say, if the voters do their job and vote in office politicians who match their own opinion, voters' opinion, so if there is a lot of correct voting, then politicians should not care about public opinion. They should just care about themselves, their own views, and automatically there would be the policies that match public opinion. Okay, so this is the role of a politician that we call a trustee. Some politicians, if you ask them, do you follow public opinion or do you follow your own opinions? There is a majority of politicians who actually say, we follow our own opinion. We have our own views, our own ideology. Okay? But then the second track, but this is what politicians say to us, but if you look at their behavior, they seem to care much more about their perception of public opinion than about their own views. So this is the second track. This is the perception of public opinion. So voting happens only once every 4 or 5 years. Forming perceptions and developing policies is something that is constantly done throughout the term. Okay? And so that is why those perceptions, in between elections, and policies are made in between elections and not during elections, this is why those perceptions are so important. Okay? And you see, and this is the so-called delegate role. And representation is a kind of, there is a tension between ideologies, what you think is best for the country, for your city, and then what you think the people want. And the delegate role, the delegate is a politician who says, well, I don't have strong views myself. My aim is to be a loyal executor of what the people want. Fewer politicians say they are delegates, but in reality, for example, when we asked Flemish politicians to come up with an example of a proposal they had that went against public opinion, I think 80% of the Flemish politicians said, I never thought about a proposal that would go against public opinion. I can't imagine ever doing this. Which means that although if you theoretically ask them, are you a delegate or trustee, many say, I'm a trustee. In the facts, most politicians, we find strong proof that they care a lot about and act more as a delegate. So, the consequences are anecdotal. If you ask politicians about to what extent public opinion matters, it matters for their policy action. So we have plenty of quotes in all those countries of politicians saying, It's hugely important for what I do. I would never start a campaign, do something that I think will, well, go against what the voters want, or for their communication. Politicians say, my perceptions of public opinion have a large impact on how I communicate. So I am much more careful, much less assertive when I think I will basically piss voters off by saying something, okay? So the communication is very different, but also their actual votes. So there is a lot of anecdotal evidence of the huge effect of perception of public opinion on politicians do, but also some experimental evidence. Experimental evidence where you really try to play games with politicians and see how they, if you gave them some information, how they would react. Okay, so experimental proof. This is what we did in Flanders and in another country as well. We gave politicians results of a real poll about a policy measure. And we said to them, 70% of your voters support this policy. And then we asked them whether, if that policy were up for a vote, how they would vote. We gave only half of the politicians that information, and half of the politicians did not get the information about the support for the policy from their electorate. And then we compared the answers of politicians to the question, would you vote in favor or against? So, and the effect is quite huge. The no public opinion information, so the chance to vote in favor on a scale from 0 to 1, so 1 is in always, and you clearly see an effect. So the politicians who are informed about public opinion vote or say that they intend to vote totally different than those who did not get the information about their own electorate, which suggests that also in the real world, of course this is in a kind of survey situation, it's an artificial situation, but politicians do change opinion, and in those cases, all the examples, so we gave every party a specific statement that went against the official party position. So it is about how politicians actually, when they are confronted with public opinion information, go against their own official party position. So it's pretty strong as evidence that, at least in an artificial survey situation, politicians do tend to follow public opinion to a large extent. So what are then the lessons for urban mobility? And this is where the difficult part starts for me, because I have no clue. So, but when I think about it, urban mobility is very controversial. I think, especially banning cars. And vocal groups target policy makers. Probably mostly vocal groups, so the ones who oppose the policy, more than the ones who support the policy. You could say maybe it's a hot minority problem, okay? So, and that protest is probably very visible and affects to a large extent what politicians think about the general support of the measure. So the intense minority influences your and my image probably of what the majority wants. And another issue is those who protest are probably also the more powerful, the stronger groups in society. So there is an aspect of inequality there. So I would say that also in terms of urban mobility, the chance of inaccurate perceptions is very high, and also the chance of having conservative biases in those perceptions. So the example I gave about banning polluting cars from cities comes very close to what you're working on, and apparently there we clearly see it in all the countries, we see that bias. So maybe those perceptions explain why some necessary measures that everyone knows are needed are not taken, and why urban mobility measures are maybe less strong than they could be. Maybe there is more support in public opinion than we think. So what to do? I would say first, start measuring public opinion professionally. Don't rely on simply talking to people on the market, okay? So, and there are two aspects of public opinion that are important. First is what people want, their position, but maybe even more important is the intensity of that opinion. To what extent do people care? And it's not because people have a certain position that they care. So caring about the intensity and the direction of the opinion against or in favor are disconnected, are two different things. Don't take your own opinion for granted. Don't take your perception of public opinion for granted. There is a reality out there. So we also see that politicians have a strong tendency to project their own opinion on their perception of public opinion. When they agree with a policy, they think that more people agree with the policy than they actually do. So conservative politicians would even have a stronger conservative bias in their perceptions, but even progressive politicians have that bias. So there is projection going on as well. Second point, public opinion is not immutable. It is changeable. So especially intensity is variable. So the positions of people don't change that easily, but the extent to which people care about things is extremely volatile, which means that it is influenceable by communication of politicians. It's difficult to convince someone that the plan is bad, that the plan is good, but it is possible to make people care especially more about it. It's difficult to make people care less about something, because making people care less about something means not talking about it, which is, of course, a kind of contradiction in terminis. And then finally, maybe act as a trustee. Try to lead public opinion. Try to, and there are many examples, not in urban policy, of politicians running ahead of public opinion. And so once a policy is in place, then public opinion shifts in the direction of the policies that have been approved beforehand. So there should not be support when you implement policies, but hopefully there is support in the long run when people see, especially in the longer term, that something pays off. So I end with a question, the question that you should answer, not me. Can sustainable mobility measures pay off electorally in the longer term? And does that term still fall? Is it still useful for politicians? Because if it's in 15 years, the wrong politicians will be rewarded, of course. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Stefan. Very insightful and interesting presentation. And I'm sure it will be food for discussion in the panel debate now. And it warms my heart to introduce the next panelists to you, because it's a star lineup of political leaders from the POLIS network. And we know now that mobility is a very contested and debated political portfolio. It's not always a present to get that on your desk. And we will openly discuss with our politicians what their daily work looks like, how they're dealing with the backlash, but also how they're getting buy-in from citizens to bring about this much needed transport transformation that we've been talking about over the past days. So let me welcome to the stage Philippe Watteeu, Deputy Mayor for Mobility at the City of Ghent, Eva Oosters, Deputy Mayor for Zero Emission Mobility at the City of Utrecht, Eugenio Patané, Deputy Mayor for Mobility at the City of Rome, Lars Strömgren, Deputy Mayor, or Vice Mayor, I should say, for Transport at the City of Stockholm, and Elke Zimmer, State Secretary for Transport at the State of Baden-Württemberg. Welcome. So that was an interesting keynote, don't you think? And now I would be curious to find out, of course, whether you feel addressed by what Stefan has been saying. Do you think that you are part of this group of politicians that is working with maybe the wrong perceptions, that you are biased and that you are underestimating maybe also the willingness of your politicians to change? Anyone who would like to reflect on that? Lars, maybe let's start with you. What's your feeling?
Well, I think the most important thing is to realize that we're all biased in some way, and try to work with that thought and
go against it.
Go
somehow.
against it sometimes, and sometimes you know, the business model of politics is to get re-elected, right? And the most important thing is also to get people to really like your policy so much so they want to vote for you. So sometimes it's better to have some people who love you and some hate you than a larger group just
not caring.
Not caring.
Yeah.
But it depends in what stage during the political like cycle.
Yeah, yeah. Philippe, you have been re-elected with sustainable mobility, elected and re-elected.
Yes.
Do you feel that that you're part of this problem that Stefan has addressed?
No, I don't think so. Maybe I'm a bit old-fashioned, but I think that politicians should lead. You have a vision. You know, you think you know that you know what is necessary to better a city. So you should try to make it in practice, to bring it in practice. So that's what we did with the circulation plan in Ghent in 2017. There was a lot of resistance, rough debates, insults for me and my collaborators.
Police protection, right?
Police protection, death threats. I got everything. So, but at the elections in 2018, my party won. We had an increase of seats from 11 to 14, and I quadrupled my number of votes. So you can win elections with sustainable mobility. But
yeah.
and I should say more, it's difficult not to win elections with sustainable mobility. If you go with one condition, if you go full force. Mm-hmm. Because if you have the domain of mobility, you are automatically, and you do some things, you are automatically in the center of the political debate. Because also what Stefan said, mobility is emotion. Yeah? There was the moment you do serious things in mobility, you are at the center of the political debate, and that is the first condition to win elections. And so I did win the elections in 2018. I saw it in different other communities and cities that if you believe in what you are doing, if you go full force ahead, then you win elections. As simple as that.
So you are the iconic example of the trustee politician then. You have a vision, you go for it, and...
I hope I am. I hope
yeah.
I am, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'm sure you are. But no, interesting. Eva, you would like to reflect on it from your perspective?
Yeah, I do.
The youngest politician on stage?
Probably, yeah. It's not the first time it happened to me, actually. But yeah, I think I can agree with Philippe's story as well. I mean, Utrecht is an example as well with winning with sustainable mobility. Mm-hmm. I'm in office for 1.5 years, but my colleague, Lot van Hooijdonk, won the elections with sustainable mobility, and that's very impressive. But at the same time,
also
I think
with police protection, I think.
Yeah, yeah. But at the same time, I think it's well, it's a risk that we get, and Philip and I had it as well when listening to the presentation. You get a little defensive as a politician, right? You're like, no, but that's not me. I have a vision. I want to continue with sustainable mobility, and don't even listen to the critics. But I think it's also, if you look at national elections or local elections, it's very important to take these critics, even if it's a loud minority, serious as well. I'm not only a vice mayor of sustainable mobility, but also from participation and democratization. And I think that you don't, help sustainable mobility as well with pushing away these critics too much. So it's giving and taking. I think,
you have to address it in one way or another. Elke, going all the way to the other side of the stage, you represent a region, because POLIS is a network of cities and regions, but it's maybe an understatement because your region is as big as Belgium. And so on top of that, you are a politician who strongly believes in the need to move towards climate neutrality in a region where the car industry is dominating, economically speaking. And we talked about the economy yesterday, but how do you then perceive what the opinion is of your voters and beyond that, your citizens in the state of Baden-Württemberg? And how do you work with that? And how strong is the pressure from, that lobby group?
The pressure is strong, I can tell you, but I think we have implemented some very workable ideas and workshops where we can deal with. The first thing is that communication has a very strong impact in Baden-Württemberg. We have implemented a philosophy of politics of being heard. Politik des Gehörtwerdens is the German word for it. And there we work on several topics in all around our country with randomized selected persons so that we get a survey of our society. And this is a method where we can hear in the parts of the society we normally don't hear in because the people are not in our bubble. And to work with our automobile industry, there we implemented a series of discussions and workshops that is, the name is the Strategic Dialogue for the Automobile Economy. And there we have all the players for the automobile economy. We have the politicians, we have the unions, we have the sustainable mobilists as well at the table. And this is these workshops now last for about, I think, 6 years. And we meet 3 or 4 times a year, and we get the people together. And we get the people together to discuss what are the topics and what are the things for the future. And this is a very, very successful dialogue with the automobilists. And I think this is the thing we can do at Politik. We have to get the people together on one table. And then we have a chance that it can work with the sustainable mobility for the future.
So, Stefan, you see that people, some politicians out there do use surveys and do not just look at their weather app or feel what's in the air, which I think is encouraging to hear. So.
This was quite interesting what he said, and we also use, for example, telephone surveys.
Okay.
Every year we make a telephone survey with about 1,000 people to hear what they think, to hear if our instruments are the instruments the people can go with. In the last survey we asked the people, what do you talk in your families? What do you talk with your friends? Do you talk about sustainable mobility? And the people told us in the huge majority, we talk about this topic, and this topic is important for us, and we want Politik to act, and we want Politik to implement the instruments towards sustainable mobility. And this is very, very useful for us in the discussions when we can present the results of these telephonic surveys.
Yeah, so that you can show you have a mandate to act. Eugenio, let's move south to Rome. Do you feel that you have the right perception of what your citizens think and what they want you to do?
Well, I think that if you have a politician that don't feel the city is the worst politician you can have. I think you have to understand what is happening in your city, what they feel, what they think about the provision you are taking, you don't put it in act. And this is our job. But it depends if you're working for the next generation or if you're working for the election.
Yeah.
And what the vision that you have for the city. If you have a specific vision, if you have some goal that you have to reach, you have to do that. You have the duty to do that. And you know that in Rome we made perhaps the largest low emission zone in Europe that is 280 kilometers square large, wide. And it was not so easy because I have to do all the municipality of Rome, the 15 municipality of Rome from months, and have to explain and arguing and discussing. But that was a right provision, a right act for the health of the person, for the climate change, for the congestion of the city. It was hard and it was tough to do that. But now, after months, the criticism and the protest and the demonstration and the strike were very low. And so we can look to a future that is better for our city. So we work perhaps not for our election, but for the next generation and what we've done.
Yeah, I think that's a great quote. Communications team in the back. Are you working for the next elections or are you working for the next generation? I think that's an instrumental question and a key question to ask, and it might be what distinguishes good from less good politicians. Philippe, are you working towards the next elections coming up very soon in Belgium, or the next generation?
Yeah, less than 1 year.
Yeah.
Of course, I work to the elections. I'm a politician. But the moment in my political career that was the most important for what I did in Ghent was the moment I got aware that a political career can stop every moment, can be done, you can be done every moment. And the moment you accept that and you say, okay, the next elections, maybe I will lose them. Okay, then I do something different. The moment you accept that you can be done every moment is the moment you can go full force for sustainable mobility. At that moment, if the elections in October 2024 will be bad for me, but I'm very trustful. But if I will do something different. So that's no problem. And then, if the worst politicians are not those who don't understand the public opinion. The worst politicians are those who think only about their political career and the next elections.
Yeah. So, if we would ask you what you consider to be the biggest challenge throughout your career so far, but at the same time is what you are the most proud of, would it be the circulation plan then?
Yes and no. Yes, because the circulation plan in Ghent is something fantastic. It changes the mobility system, but it has one effect that I'm not so glad. That's not so good, because the circulation plan is like the sun in my policy. Because if you look at the circulation plan, you don't see the many other things we did with administration, and that's a bit painful because there is so much more than the circulation plan. For example, our car sharing program. The moment I started in Ghent as a deputy mayor, we had about 1,500 members of car-sharing organizations. Now we have more than 20,000. We had about 120 sharing cars. Now we have more than 2,000. So that's also very important. But no one, if you talk about Ghent, everyone talks about the circulation plan. But there's also the car-sharing program. We built in 10 years. We built 40 to 45. Cycling bridges, underpasses, and so on. Also, that is important. We worked on cycling coaches. So, circulation plan, yes, but there are so many other things. And the challenge is always to change the mobility system and not to get stuck in a bunch of small, popular measures, but that don't change the system.
Don't make a big.
The aim is to change the mobility system.
So Lars, if you look at the situation in Stockholm, what would you say is a measure that has been introduced that generated the biggest backlash, but also at the same time the greatest outcome?
I think that is the introduction of a thing we call summer streets. So that's during the summer we take away the cars and the traffic from streets and make it a place for people. And when we introduced that was before my time, 2016. There were a lot of resistance and protests and so on. And now they have been more and more, and the shop owners and the people who live in the area are very happy. And there's one street that I like very much, and next year we were thinking that we would maybe need to redo the pipes and not be able to have it as a summer street. And it was in the media that all the cafe owners, they said this will mean the end for us and we need to do it. And I can tell you all in this room that I just got a message from my department that we can postpone that renovation.
Okay.
And so you're very working with people's feelings, and I think it's important to see the public opinion in three, or an issue's journey through the system in three components. So it's about winning people's minds, but it's also about winning friends, and winning votes. And those three components needs to sort of, they're communicating vessels, because you need to, in one point of time, you need to have the votes to get elected. But you also need to sort of, and I really liked what Stefan said, this thing that if you cannot make people care less about something, because that would mean not talking about it. And when we had the election last year, we tried to find an issue that we call the mistletoe issue, because you want an issue that people care about, that you can sort of kiss the voter under. But the mistletoe is also a parasite, so it should also parasite on all the other issues. So it should be something that the other politicians cannot avoid taking the debate around, which means you talk about it, which means they talk about your issues. So
you've been kissing a lot and under the mistletoe. So in Utrecht, you mentioned that Lotte has dealt with backlash as well. What was it linked to, and has it generated a great outcome in the end?
Yeah, I think I can resonate with a lot of colleagues, a lot of stuff colleagues already said, because I think one of the biggest challenges with mobility is that these are transitions, year-long processes of choices a coalition needs to make, but the coalition after that needs to support it as well, and the one after that maybe as well. So it's a process, and I think it takes courage for the first one to give the first push. There are a lot of examples in mobility in Utrecht that have these backlashes because it was the first time. And maybe the example looks a lot like the one in Stockholm, but we have cycling streets, for example. And at first, people thought, well, this is very dangerous, mixing cars and cyclists on the same road. But we saw that if you create more space for these cyclists and more space for active mobility and change the view of who is the boss on the road, is it the ride of the fastest or the ride of the healthiest, the cleanest, change the concept of mobility in that way, that maybe it gets safer. Of course, there are a little, it doesn't go, it's not perfect, but I think we're learning, and I think it's a great transition because it's not only a mobility transition, but also a mindset, a culture transition, and that's necessary for mobility and sustainable mobility as well.
Yeah, and a point that was also mentioned by Stefan is that maybe we are facing a very loud minority very often in our cities and regions that is against something you are proposing, but that there's maybe a much larger silent majority that actually agrees. Is this something that you are experiencing in Rome, Eugenio? And how do you deal with that loud, annoying minority?
Well, in Rome we had this problem in a lot of acts that we did. In quite every act of sustainable mobility.
Oh, poor you.
The low emission zone, when we decide about micro-sharing mobility, when we decide about bike lane. So it's hard. But I think that it depends on the work you do before you take that act. If you just build a network of consensus about the provision you're doing, you're strong when you do that. And just we did in Rome this one. Perhaps the most important act that we do it is just build like that, just creating a network of consensus, just taking the act, because it comes a moment when you have to decide. And when you have to do that. After we can talk, after we can discuss, after we can also modify the provision if necessary, but it's inevitable that you take the decision. And so that we did, and in every act that we did just right now is that is the method that we use, and now it is powerful. I mean that everything we did now is changing. We are in the middle of a revolution about increasing public transport, increasing the active mobility, increasing the micro-sharing mobility, not just looking at that like you know, a tourist way of transport, but with a transport function in a multimodality way of moving in the city that we are constructing. All of these provisions are building with a consensus by a network of consensus, and then we can discuss, and then we modify it if it's possible.
Yeah, so you're willing also to modify based on the feedback you receive once you have introduced the policy. So there's a Roman revolution coming up, I hear. You wanted to pick up on this minority issue, Philippe.
A little story about backlash and support. I already told that in the time before the implementation of the circulation plan, it was really hard. The insults, the death threats, the police surveillance, and so on, 2.5 years of really rough debate. And then the first day of the implementation of the circulation plan, I had an appointment with a journalist at 11 o'clock in the morning to have a tour, a bike ride in the city. And I was a bit afraid of it because I thought if someone starts in the streets, starts to yell at me and insults me, that's not good for the cover of the newspaper, of the front page. And I thought, should I do that, yes or no? I did it. And what was incredibly, it was absurd, was from the first minute to the last minute, 1 hour in the bike ride, I only got congratulations, thumbs up, people who said, we are so glad you succeeded. And I said, where were you all those years? So it's, the backlash was very loud, but the people who are in favor, they trust what policymakers do, and they are silent. Go ahead. We are trusting it, and it was really absurd.
Yeah, but heartwarming at the same time, I can imagine.
Absolutely.
And that must have been a great article in the newspaper then. Elke, so you were mentioning that you're going through this great effort of doing all the surveying and making sure you don't forget any of the groups. So do you feel that you have a very good picture that way of that silent majority that maybe we don't hear enough of? And does that give you the mandate then also to push through when you have to?
I think in Baden-Württemberg we have a quite good picture of these groups we sometimes forget, because in these workshops we do with the groups, we sometimes forget the poor people, the handicapped people, the elder people, or the youngest, the children, or whatever. We have workshops especially with these groups, and the workshops last for 1 year, so we can really go deep into the topics, and then we can really see what we have to implement in our policy. We can't implement everything. We're making politics for the whole of Baden-Württemberg and not for a special group, but I think it's important to see what the needs of the special groups are, and then you can talk to them and can explain them why some things maybe are not able to be implemented as an instrument or whatever. But let me tell you a little story from the backlash.
Yeah.
In my home city, there was a big federal garden show, and there were over 2 million people expected to come as visitors. The public transport was not designed for so many people. So the city council decided to build a cable car system. And you can't imagine how loud the protests were. The shadow under the cable car, the CO2 emissions for the construction of the cable car. But the city council, there were lots of discussions, but the city council stood to its decision, and they constructed the cable car. And the cable car was the highlight of the flower show. The people were so enthusiastic using the cable car, and now we have a discussion in the whole region where we can build the next cable car, and then a cable car that is part of the public transport system and not only a cable car for a flower show. So I think sometimes we have to stand to our decisions, we have to stand to our opinions, we have to realize what we think, what is the best for the future and the best for the people in our region or in our country. And then we can convince the people when they see what the benefits are. The people normally only want to keep, it's good like it is. Let us keep what we have at the moment, no changes. This is what I hear so often. But the benefits we have with our sustainable mobility, we have a benefit for our health, we have less noise, we have less car accidents. It's a benefit for our society. These are the things people don't see, but they have to see the things in reality, in the summer streets, for example.
Yeah, so and when they experience it
the
in
experience
real life,
is the word, yes.
Then
we have
they
to
are
give the
convinced.
people the experience of the advantages of the sustainable mobility, and this, I think, is the way to convince the people.
Is that also, Lars, the way you managed to get buy-in for the congestion charge? I know it's before your time, but normally, you know, there was the referendum in Edinburgh, for example. They just asked people, would you like a congestion charge? Hell no, of course. It's like the whole Brexit shit show, you know. But you did it in a different way and still did it with the referendum.
Yeah, and I think that was very interesting also what you said, because I think we talked now about a bias toward opinions, but I think there is also a bias towards the things you see and the things you don't see. So politicians want to inaugurate things, so there's a bias in one way, in the direction that we want to open things, not remove things. And that's also something I think it's important to think about, like how can we do something that's good, and sometimes not doing anything is the better choice, but that's hard to sort of put focus to. What we did with the congestion charge was that we made a pilot, and that's one method used in many situations. People were critical about the congestion charge, and we did a pilot. This was 2006, and it was half a year. And from the first day, traffic was removed with 22%, decreased with 22%. And then you could just show people. They could. It was a picture on the news, on the newspaper, with the very busy street the day before and the day after, and that was very visible. So when the referendum was then, so it was a pilot, 6 months, and then it was removed 3 months, and then it was a referendum. And without that pilot, it wouldn't have been possible. And I think that it's also, as a politician, or politics in general, it consists of talking, deciding, and then doing, right? And it's a convention that you think that talking should eventually lead to actions.
Yeah.
That's not always the case, but it should be the case. And that means that there is a new round of talking about an issue when you have something to show. And I think that's also try to get from the talking stage to the action stage as soon as possible, so you don't have to argue without being able to show something. And
so let them experience, and then you will win their hearts and minds. Yeah, no, that's very powerful indeed. At the same time, I think something that worries us all is the increasing populism that we are facing, and that also is inherently linked to politics. And it's also something that Stefan Walgrave in his research has been looking at, wondering whether the fact that we have this populist revolution is linked to the issue of not having the concerns of all groups addressed. And also linked to that is, we are talking here about climate neutrality, we're talking here about the need for mobility to become sustainable, so that we address the issues of road safety, congestion, air pollution, noise pollution, what have you. So the research, the scientific evidence is out there, and still we see that increasingly it turns out to be an issue of left versus right. How can we move away of this left versus right dichotomy? It shouldn't be something that only green politicians deal with and that right-wing politicians ignore. What's your view on that, Eva?
Well, I wish I had had a complete answer to that, because if we
talking about populism, the
of
Netherlands,
course, it's so complicated, and the power of populism is, of course, that it shows that there are very easy fixes to very, very complicated issues. And of course, these fixes aren't the right ones, but it does hit a right feeling to a big part of our community in the Netherlands as well. I mean, when we prepared this panel discussion, it was a totally other political climate than we are in now. Last week we had the elections, and well, the biggest party is a right-wing party that is also very populist and conservative in some way, and leaves the other left-wing, more progressive party way behind. And I think that as a politician you can't ignore these facts. You can't ignore the critics that are also addressed to the more progressive sound that we have, because people are very insecure about their income, their prospects on housing, the effects climate change has on them. And to make climate change, I think, a subject of everyone, not a left or right-wing issue, is to show people what effect climate change can have on them as well. But also that our measures are not only directed at these individual citizens, but at larger companies as well. And that we have some measures that are not like restrictive, but also stimulating. Funding, for example, for solar panels or electric cars, or helping people to choose for more active mobility as well. And I think just showing what the effects can be, but also helping to stimulate and not being, well, a danger to people as well.
So not just sticks, but also carrots are important.
Carrots are very important, I think, in this
and
issue.
link it to their personal well-being as well. Elke, another kind of increasing dichotomy that we witness as well, also on the European level, by the way, is, and I'm asking you because you represent a region, is the divide between urban and rural. And the feeling, especially from the rural side or the suburban side, that too much attention is going to the cities, that the cities are closing down and leaving the cars out, and that this is challenging the rural, more car-dependent community. How are you trying to overcome this opposition between those two parts of your region?
It's right what you say. We have this two parts in our region, the strong urban areas and the rural areas. And in our concepts, even in our climate and mobility concept, we try to address both. And we try to address both with different instruments. For example, we have a goal to reduce cars up to 20% in the next 6 years. It's relatively easy in the urban areas to reduce car usage up to 20%. But in rural areas, it's quite difficult. So we have different measures. For the rural areas, it will be only a reduction at about 10%, and for the urban areas, a reduction at about 50%. And this is what we try with our instruments, to implement the same instrument, but in a different intensity. Normally, it's the more intensity in the urban areas. For example, the use of pedestrian or bike use is more easy in the urban areas as well. So the amount of people who have to use bikes to achieve our climate goals has to increase in the urban areas. But our effort is that also in the rural areas, we have to go steps towards a sustainable mobility. Not as fast as in the urban areas, but we have to go the steps as well.
Because in the end, also, the incoming commuter traffic to urban cores, which is coming from the hinterland, is creating a lot of negative externalities as well for the city. So how do you deal with that then? The fact that it's not just within the rural community that there is a higher level of car dependence and that, of course, fewer alternatives might be in place, but the fact that they also negatively impact the urban cores because they're coming in. How do you address that then?
This is a thing we cannot only deal when we address the rural areas. The mobility of our commuters has a high impact on our CO2 emissions in Baden-Württemberg. And this is why we address the employees as well. And we try to bring all the people there together, the employees, the politicians, and the commuters, and to implement systems where the commuters, when they come from the rural areas, can use other things to come to their work. That can be that the employees can just go with their car to a central point where they can leave their car, and then you have a perfect public transport system so they don't have to come into the urban areas. Or it also can be that we, and this is what we have done at the moment, we have made an alliance with our Arbeitgeber, with our firms and with our
Companies.
yeah, with our employers and with our companies, we made an alliance that they make a strong emphasis on the travels from their employees. So that it's a work that they have to do as well together
like
with us.
plans, for example, company
Yes.
mobility plans and so on.
And
Yeah.
less companies have really good plans for the commuters. They all have plans, but the plans are not as good as they can be. We have companies in Baden-Württemberg that are very, very proficient in these plans, but I think 80% of the companies have lots to do with their mobility plans for their employees.
Yeah, that resonates with a Belgian citizen where the perversion of company cars is still creating big problems as well.
Yes, but the companies have to do them because they want to be climate neutral in
Yeah.
2040.
Indeed.
And the transport of their employees is a big emphasis to be climate neutral in 2040.
And that brings me to a final point that I would like to address, and that is the fact that we cannot do it alone, right? Public sector, you need buy-in from the private sector, from companies, from major traffic generators, but also from a wide variety of maybe private sector-driven mobility services, for example. And Eugenia, you mentioned it earlier that you want to create this ecosystem and are reaching out to shared mobility providers, for example. How are you doing that, and how are you creating this public-private partnership?
That's quite an alliance between us and the private sector in every sector of mobility. I mean, for the charging of the car, for the parking system, for the MaaS, the mobility as a service, the application, for everything we try in an alliance with the public sector, public companies. We may with public tender and application, or with the method of project financing. We are building a lot of infrastructure mobility about project financing, and this is fundamental. We find a lot of solution with them, so it's not more enviable just the alliance with the private sector. The newly alliance we have to do is with the institution, with the national institution, with the European institution. That
And the Vatican, maybe?
Yes, that they have to pay attention to the cities, or to all the cities of Europe, the little cities, the medium city, and the capitals, and the big cities. Because we are an important part of the life of this continent, and the most of the people live in our cities, and perhaps sometimes I feel that not so much attention to us and the work we're doing, the hard work we're doing for our continent. So in terms of funding, in terms of regulation, in terms of helping us in our work, we just applying the rules that the European Union gave us. Probably we need more attention for what we're doing every day for the continent.
Power to the cities, and you need to be empowered by other levels of government and funded, indeed. We are wrapping up, and I would like to ask you as a concluding question, what would be your main advice as experienced political leaders to a newly elected politician that gets that beautiful mobility portfolio on his, on her desk, or her desk? Philippe, very briefly.
It's very simple. Don't hesitate, go for it. And the results will follow. And you will see where you come, and then The future is bright, but don't hesitate. Go for it.
And don't be scared.
That's a beautiful one. I think mine would be don't only keep the public opinion of your current citizens in mind, but also the citizens that you can put in a survey, the citizens of the future. So keep them in mind as well and make bold choices to do the right things for the future.
I think my suggestion is just to have a strong vision and to have a vision of the city, a vision of the mobility, and to have some goal. There's a sentence that an old philosopher, Seneca, used to say, there's not good wind for the mariner who doesn't know where to go. And so you have to know where to go to take the good wind, okay?
I never have the good wind when I'm cycling, though. Lars?
Well, I think it's important to understand that if you want to survive for a long time, you need to realize the value of winning people's minds, winning friends for your issues, next to also winning votes. And then I think you should try to find a mistletoe question. The people who love it, you can treat them and pamper them and kiss them.
Yeah.
And the people who hate it, they can't ignore it. They need to repeat your message. And that's what you want.
You're a big kisser, I hear you.
I think we have to be courageous and visionary. And we don't have to get we should not forget the communication, because in the communication we can win the hearts and the minds of our people. That's what you said.
I think, ladies and gentlemen, we can agree that all the politicians here on stage are trustees, so please join me in applauding them. Just go that way. Who? I don't know her. So now we are coming to something that we are doing every single year, and that's hand out the POLIS Award. And we present the POLIS Award to a POLIS member that has made impressive strides towards sustainable transport innovation. And of course, all of them, for that reason, already deserve the award as well. But also has presented many of these solutions here at the POLIS Conference. And we also applaud them for their great engagement in the POLIS network this year, but also all the years before. And when we talk about this year's winner, it's a city that is representing over 200,000 inhabitants today, but is expecting up to 250,000 inhabitants by 2035. And they're truly a forerunner when it comes to the transition towards more sustainable mobility. And while this growth that they are facing, this massive growth that they are facing towards 35 is putting pressure on the city, they're also using this as an opportunity to expand active travel, public transport and shared mobility, but also introduce cleaner and smaller freight vehicles, for example, and unpack gendered mobility patterns. They're also the city that was amongst the first to introduce a traffic circulation plan. And when I say the first, I'm going back to the 70s. And we see the beautiful legacy of that decision in the 70s still today. It's a city where when you talk about peak hour, we talk about thousands of cyclists hitting the people-friendly streets. And this city, ladies and gentlemen, is already a 15-minute city today. So it shows also that this concept that we have been talking about a lot, which again also has triggered populist controversy, is actually working in real life as well. And at the same time, this city has also been sharing its expertise with other members in the POLIS network. This year's edition of the POLIS Award has been sponsored kindly by Uber, so let me invite Santosh to the stage to announce the winner of the POLIS Award. Hi, Santosh. So here's the envelope for you to announce the winner. I'll give you a microphone as well.
So the winner is from my home country, the city of Groningen.
The city of Groningen, indeed. So let us welcome to the stage Philip Broeksma, Terry Albronda, Jan Kees Kleuver, Edwin Papjes and Sjoukje van der Vlucht. Please join us on stage. Oh, yeah, you see what a great delegation we have here. Let me give this to you, Philip Broeksma. Well deserved, and here is the award. Yeah. Politicians want to hold the awards. You should. You want to say something briefly?
Thank you so much for, as the introduction was given, is it all about Groningen? This was all about Groningen. And we're so proud of this award. And a few years ago, we renewed our mobility vision. And I thought, City Council, do you really know what you're approving? It was 3/4 of a majority, because things will really change once more. And now we're executing this vision. It's a vision for 20 years, so step by step, smaller steps, bigger steps. And yes, they do know what they've agreed to, and we're doing it, and we're moving on, and we're heading forward. And the majority of the city is so happy about what we're doing. So when Philip says, go for it, and go on, and move on, that's just what we're doing, and it works. Thank you.
Congratulations, well deserved. I'll give the chocolates to the politician, but you have to share them with the whole team, because this is a team effort, of course. So, and there is a surprise, because we have another award, and this is a new award. We haven't given that one before. No, you can. You're not sponsoring this award. It's coming from the POLIS team. You know how uncomfortable it can be sometimes to put yourself out there and say how great you are. Huh? Although when I look at LinkedIn, many people feel quite comfortable with it. I mean, many are very honored and humbled and what have you. But we at POLIS, actually, we are a very modest bunch. So it's always great to see members saying how great we are so that we don't have to do it ourselves. And that's why we introduced the POLIS Ambassador Award. We have members that really are out there and are promoting POLIS on social media, but also in real life by talking to those cities and regions who, I don't know why, are not yet a POLIS member yet. And if they tell them how great we are, that is much more convincing. And a very well-deserved winner of this very first POLIS Ambassador Award is Edwin Mermans from the city of Noord-Brabant. The province of Noord-Brabant, sorry. So he's a perfect ambassador and really is putting POLIS out there all the time. And then we just have to retweet or like and share, and that's really great. So thank you, Edwin.
Join doing that.
Sorry.
Please all, is it working? Yeah, please all join doing that. Use social media and tell how great POLIS is and that we need more members.
What he said. So in the meantime, also my colleagues have suggested that we should introduce the Best POLIS Dancer Award and the Best Dressed POLIS Member Award. So maybe next year we need 1 full hour to give all these awards. But now let me come to the point where I need to say a couple of thank yous before we close this plenary session. First of all, a big thank you from the whole POLIS team, and you see them here. They still fit on one slide, but it's getting tight. A big thank you from the whole POLIS team to all of you, our beautiful audience and our beloved members. But also a big thank you from me to the whole POLIS team. I love you all, you're a great bunch, and of course, without you, this conference wouldn't have existed. But I would like to invite some people to the stage as well who deserve the spotlight today. And the first one is an absolute rock star, and you've received emails. All of you have received emails from her. It's our events manager, Alexia. She just keeps on coordinating this conference like a queen, no matter how big it gets. Alexia, where are you? She has been working late for many, many nights, and she is truly the best. But of course, this conference and the whole presidency of the past 2 years also wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Tim Asperges and David Tessers. Please join me on stage. So they have been instrumental in terms of making this conference a success, but also in terms of being a great president and that therefore also a great ambassador of the POLIS network throughout the last 2 years with the just transition at the core of this presidency. So thank you, Tim, thank you, David, for this very intense and close cooperation, even more so because I'm a citizen of Leuven, if you didn't know that yet. And also thank you, of course, to the whole mobility department, the communications team as well. It's been a true pleasure and a true honor. And that's also the opportunity for me now to give the floor to David for the closing words and for the handover of the presidency.
Yeah, hello everybody. So this conference is ending. What did you think about the POLIS Conference 2023 in Leuven? Was it good? Yeah, I think it was a marvelous conference we had, and we're still very honored as a city that we could host this conference. We're also very happy that we could welcome 900 enthusiastic mobility professionals in our city. So thank you very much. We were breaking a record, we said. Thank you very much for being here, and I hope you had the opportunity to discover a little bit of our city. If you didn't have, then take some time to do it, or maybe a better idea, turn back to our city. You're always welcome in Leuven. And we've said it already, yeah, it was a fantastic conference with so many breakout sessions, so interesting plenary sessions, and many, many inspiring speakers. So thanks also to all the people who contributed, also the sponsors of this conference. Thanks a lot for that. And I also want to thank the team of POLIS. We did it already, but without the team of POLIS, it wouldn't be possible to have this conference here in close partnership with the city of Leuven and all these brilliant people working for the city of Leuven. And so for all these people that I name now, I would ask a last but very loud applause. We are very honored, I already said, that we could host this conference. Leuven is a city that was recently selected by the European Commission as one of the 100 climate neutral and smart cities. And this morning we had very interesting presentations about it by Katrien Rijke, the director of Leuven 2030, and also by Hans of Sweco. And we know that it requires big changes in our city in the coming period, big changes in such a short time. Also on the level of mobility, we need to accelerate the shift to sustainable mobility. And not only that, we also need to redistribute the space, because the final goal is not only to tackle climate change and to reduce the CO2 emission. The final goal is to create a better city, a prosperous, a green, a lively, and a healthy city. And therefore, we need in our city, and that was the subject also of the presentation, we need collaboration and partnership. And we are organizing it in our city with many, many stakeholders in the city inside the NGO Leuven 2030. But what we need in our city, the key is collaboration. What we need in our city, we also need among cities in Europe. And that's the reason why it was a great adventure for us to be, during the last 2 years, the president of this precious POLIS network. It was great to do that, and we want to thank you again for giving us that opportunity as a city, and also the trust. Because we need to come together as cities. We need to come together because we are in front of similar challenges. And so Leuven will invest itself and will follow very closely the work of the POLIS network. But our presidency of the POLIS network is ending now. And I'm very happy that we can hand over that presidency to a city we admire, a city we love, the city where last year we did a visit to that city with the whole team of the mayor, and some weeks ago a delegation of that city came to visit Leuven. And so it is a big honor and a big pleasure to hand it over, and now I want to ask to Utrecht, and I want to ask Deputy Mayor Eva Oosters back on the stage. So I wish you, Eva, good luck with that presidency, but I'm 100% sure that it will be a great time. So we're looking forward to the collaboration.
Thank you very much, David. And I would say you have set the bar very high for us. It was an amazing conference here in Leuven. I think everyone enjoyed it very much. And I'm very honored that we in Utrecht can take over this important role of continuing the mission of POLIS in Utrecht. So we are very looking forward to welcoming you there. Thank you very much.
One more thing that you should know. Actually, this presidency for Eva is a birthday present, because today is her birthday. So let's sing for Eva. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Eva. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you so much.
And let's have a first look at the city of Utrecht through a short impression video. Once more, congratulations to the city of Utrecht. So they will be hosting the POLIS Conference in 2025, so the second year of their presidency. So I'm sure you're wondering where we will be going in 2024. So let me welcome back to the stage Elke Zimmer, Secretary State State Secretary of the Baden-Württemberg state in Germany.
Thank you, Karen. Dear POLIS members, dear sustainable mobility experts, now it's time for Baden-Württemberg. It's time for the land. I'm very proud to invite you to come to the POLIS Conference 2024 to Baden-Württemberg. Baden-Württemberg is one of the most industrialized regions in Germany. It is located in the southwest of Germany, bordering Switzerland to the south and France to the west. Internationally, it's known as the land. It was in Baden-Württemberg where Karl Benz invented the first automobile, and it was where Karl Freiherr von Drais invented the first bicycle. And now we want to become a pioneer in upscaling sustainable and interconnected mobility. The region has the ambitious goal to reduce carbon emissions and become climate neutral by 2040. That means 10 years ahead of the European Union. In line with this goal and the legal obligation of the State's Climate Protection Act for the transport sector, we have developed 5 goals that we need and that we want to achieve within the next 7 years. You see them, I hope. Now you first see.
In Baden-Württemberg, we're shaping the mobility of tomorrow with innovative industries and cutting-edge research. But for today, I'm done working. Yet I still have a lot to do, and I'm heading right out on my way. Our fast and reliable public transport's the way to go. Affordable fares and digital ticketing make it so easy to use. And I love travelling sustainably. So here we go. Let's take a walk through our vibrant cities. To transform mobility, we need to combine all means of transport. More and more people are cycling to get around. Our network of bike paths is constantly growing and improving. Because cycling's not only healthy and eco-friendly, it's also just really fun. We need carbon-neutral technologies to drive our cars, trucks and buses. So we are expanding our charging infrastructure, along with car-sharing programs. So off we go on our safe roads, designed and built with digital technologies, which also help to keep our roads in great shape. Our goal is to make Baden-Württemberg climate neutral by 2040. To do this, we have to change how goods and people move around. Sustainable mobility for everyone. In cities and the countryside. For young and for old. So we're finally here. Because in Baden-Württemberg, mobility brings people together. Diverse and sustainable. Just like our state.
So I'm very, very excited to welcome you to our annual POLIS Conference next year in the beautiful city of Karlsruhe. We are happy to exchange ideas and approaches for sustainable mobility at site. And we have lots of questions we want to discuss for you. For example, how we can strengthen the path for the pedestrians. And we are proud that we are the first region which is host of the annual POLIS Conference. We are in Baden-Württemberg. We are elaborating and implementing many ideas for being a pioneer of sustainable and interconnected mobility. So, be warmly welcomed. I'm very proud to see you next year. Leuven was a wonderful guest this year, and we want to be a wonderful guest next year on the 27th and the 28th of November in Karlsruhe. We are excited to welcome you, and we have many good examples in the land on sustainable and interconnected mobility. You are all very warmly welcomed next year. See you there. Thanks a lot.
So see you next year in Karlsruhe. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you very much.
Met z'n allen in een cirkel rond de tafel. Zie door mijn oogleden de eeuwige gezichten. En ik heb gezocht naar een motief om ze te haten. Maar al dat stukjes heb ik zelf aangericht. Ik ben dankbaar voor mijn leven, ook wel voor mijn dood. En ik dank er voor wat lukt en mezelf voor het gekloot. En ik dank er voor het eten, dank er voor de wijn. Ook al is het niet tevreden, is dat glas te klein.